Welcome to all of us. It is so nice to see you. My name is Nena. I come from the internet. I'm the chief web advocate at the World Wide Web Foundation. I will be your host today, not your moderator. This is not a webinar. It is going to be a conversation. So feel relaxed, invite your dogs, invite your birds, invite all the pets, bring on family. It is open, it is digital, and it is for the whole world. I've worked 18 years from home, so I have no problem moderating this from my sitting room and drinking water once in a while, and I will encourage you to do the same. Yes. Like I said, I'm part of the digital movement. I have been listed as one of those, what they say, world's 100 most influential people in digital government. And I think that if you registered, you must have seen a Political, which is a platform for open government and government people. And that's why we are here. This is the final in a series of OGP's drive for open response and open recovery during this pandemic. We don't just want to keep ourselves to COVID-19 alone. We're having a global look at pandemics, and sure we are in the COVID crisis now. Please note that this webinar is recorded because we want others who are not here to also benefit. Please choose a language that you would want to be comfortable in. And yes, there's a way you can go down to the bottom of your screen. You can, if you are on phone, if you're on the app, you are going to see more. That's where you choose a language. If you're on your laptop, you are going to see the globe. You can choose a language there. If you are using Linux, that may not be available. You can just keep to the default language, which is English. We will have to mute you on arrival, so please bear with us as we mute you. This helps us to listen and hear each other better. Now I said I'm in West Africa. If you can check in, I see Ken from Melbourne. Oh my goodness. Oh, well, we are online. We can't say people in Melbourne are far away. No. Alison Merchant, you're welcome. Carlos Diaz, everyone, please let's know where you're checking in from. And let's give a wave. If you're on camera, put on your camera. Let's see you. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to pause now. I'm going to give the floor to Robin. Robin will give us a few words from OGP, and then we're going to give it a ride. Robin, where are you locked down at? Where are you?
Locked down in Berlin, Germany. I'm very lucky because Germany's done a good job so far managing the crisis. So feeling very privileged and hoping everybody's feeling safe. Yeah, thank you, Nena, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody on behalf of OGP. And I'm here as the Civil Society co-chair of OGP. A warm welcome to everybody. As Nena said, this is the fifth and last of OGP's Open Response, Open Recovery Digital Forum. And I really want to give a shout out to thank Apolitical and OGP Support Unit. There's a lot of conferences that we know got delayed and we all expected to get on planes and travel the planet and meet. This one didn't exist and was developed and curated and co-created in just a few weeks. And it's been a fantastic opportunity to look at the implications of COVID on open government, on public health, on access to information, and today on digital governance. And just a big thank you to everybody who's made this happen on short notice and in the crazy world we're living in. Being connected and being a part of the digital world and having access to the internet, quite frankly, has been a hugely important part of our lives. And for those of us working online, our livelihoods in this crisis. It's made this remote working possible. It's made connecting to each other possible. And it's also given us access to critical data and information from governments, from authorities about the virus, about statistics and science and other things we need to know about. Digital governance is one of the key priorities as well for the government of Argentina and myself, and we're the co-chairs of Open Government Partnership this year. As many of you know, data, and in fact, open data, has always been extremely important to Open Government Partnership, but it was never an end in itself. It mattered for accountability. And in the past couple of years, I think we've had a recognition that not just data, but data governance has moved further up the agenda for the partnership. Just yesterday, the OGP hosted a learning conversation with representatives of governments of France, Netherlands, New Zealand, sharing implementation experience on algorithmic transparency. And even before the pandemic, it was critical for us to ensure that digital technologies and automated decision-making would be employed in the public and private sector with transparency, with accountability. And with COVID-19 in front of us, even more people are talking about the need to know who has data, how it's being used for decisions, etc. We are seeing some trends, concerning trends in some cases, regarding the use of contract tracing apps, color coding, are you yellow, are you red, are you green, and spreads of misinformation and disinformation. We've heard a lot in this crisis that accurate science matters, but we also know that data matters too, and data governance is part of that. So I certainly hope that this conversation can provide us some concrete examples of what's working, what needs to work in your countries, and where OGP and the partners here can support you and also learn. We want to be able to take these experiences into action plans for national and local governments. And we also want to take some of this great learning into the OGP Gov Guide, which is going to be produced around the COVID crisis. So again, just thank you very much. Back to Nena and to our speakers, and wishing everyone a really interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Robin. I see people from all over the world: Alan, Evelyn, Hazel, Satu, Lillian, Anga, Nadia, Eve. I think we're around about over 200 now. Great. Welcome to all of us. Before we hear from our eminent contributors, everyone knows this is COVID. You cannot not say you've not heard of it. And what these pandemics has brought to us is unprecedented levels of technology being available to be used for a wide range of activities, from providing information about the pandemic itself, for tracing individuals, information in real time, rolling out government services, government to citizen relations, all of that we've seen that, and even citizen control of government activities. Digital technologies we've also seen, as Audrey raised, is at risk. And we've also seen people raising voices about violations of privacy rights, lack of global recognized standards. There are quite a number of issues. And so governments and governing bodies and power holders are being challenged on so many fronts. But today we are zeroing down on digital governance. Wherever you are, whoever you are, you cannot run away from the fact that digital has become the big word in this pandemic. I'm just coming off another conference where someone was helping us refer to SARS. And he said that during SARS, countries with higher degree of digitization were able to avoid or mitigate the economic impact of SARS up to 75%. So today we're looking at us as OGP, we're looking at you as an individual, as a country, we're looking at you as a civil citizen, we're looking at you as an organization, and we're asking ourselves, what is the place of digital governance in times of pandemics, in times of crisis, at this very time when everyone is asked to go online? What is our role? What are our challenges? What has worked? What is expected of us? And even as we move further, since Tuesday, we had a kickoff session, and this is the last session. Where do we expect OGP to step in? What are the issues? What are the challenges? What is it we want to fight? What is the right battle? I have a great number of, I won't call them panelists, I will call them resource people that we respect. Henri is in Paris. The summer has arrived in Paris. Audrey is in Taipei. Audrey is connecting through Skype, and so we may not be able to chat with him. He's using a link to be able to join us. Martha is in Mexico City, and my old boss, Martin, is also here. So we have these wonderful people and many others who are going to speak to us. And yes, don't ever think I said these are not speakers. They are resource people. So I'm going to be keeping my eye. My job is to keep an eye on the chat, pick you out from the chat, and ask you to contribute. It is open, it is digital, it is governance, it is you and me. And we're all in it together. That is the spirit of openness. That is the spirit of OGP. Once again, welcome. We want to hear from Henri. Henri, welcome. We would like to know from you, because France was quick in putting on an online platform in pre-testing. Even people outside France has done this. I used it. And even though I live in Africa, when President Macron is speaking, I listen, because I feel that there is a link between what is happening in France and what is happening in Cote d'Ivoire and in many other Francophone countries, because everybody actually is looking at everybody. Okay, so my question to you is, what lessons have you learned? Every evening, either the president or the prime minister comes on TV to brief the citizen.
Merci.
He's no longer for France alone, he's for all of us. So what have you learned? What can you share? Welcome.
Merci beaucoup. Alors d'abord, bonjour à certains, bonsoir à d'autres. Nous sommes sur au moins 12 heures de fuseau horaire, c'est assez touchant, et ça prouve aussi que nous sommes une communauté mondiale. J'espère que tout le monde va bien parmi ceux qui nous écoutent et autour de nous. Et pour répondre à votre question, je dirais d'abord que les enseignements, il nous faudra probablement des mois pour les tirer sérieusement et proprement. Nous vivons un événement qui est un moment historique, et c'est la première crise mondiale aussi rapide et avec autant de transparence et une telle réaction mondiale. Brièvement, je crois que la culture de l'open government a été saisie par cette crise de 3 manières. Premièrement, c'est un moment où les États doivent apprendre à faire preuve d'une très grande transparence, alors même qu'ils savent qu'ils font des erreurs. En France, on a compris assez vite qu'il faudrait que nous aurions une bataille de fake news, que nous aurions des influences qui agiteraient cette bataille, et que la parole institutionnelle était très importante. Alors, il a pu y avoir des erreurs, et d'autres en feront aussi, mais dès le début, il a été décidé de publier tous les jours en open data les données de l'épidémie.
Just one second. We need to make sure that the interpretation is working. Can you choose, did you choose French as your language?
Oui.
Did you choose French in your language option? Okay, so we need to make
Je l'ai
sure
fait,
that,
oui.
okay, so it is our interpretation that is not working. If that is the case, I'm going to do a summary, or we might ask Henry to speak in English. Which one is better?
Okay, I will try to speak English briefly.
D'accord. En cas de problème, je vais vous appuyer.
So
Mais si vous
briefly,
comprenez-
sorry, I say that. So I said good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are everywhere. That's a very impressive international crisis and impressive international movement. I have to cut my header because I have a translation in my computer. So I continue, but I don't hear you anymore. I think that we have a lot of things to learn from this crisis, and just the beginning. It will need months and months to take all the lessons that we can take from this crisis. From my
Henry,
perspective, we need
I will
to we can
interrupt you.
invest the
Henry,
legacy of open government, the strategies
interrupt you
and
one last
methodologies
time.
of open government in three ways. First, here we need a real and important transparency, because this crisis is also an infodemic, as says the World Health Organization. We have a lot of fake news, a lot of rumors, sometimes some foreign interferences, but mainly it's domestic. And we need to be sure that the government will be trusted, understood and trusted. For this, France made some mistakes. Of course, we all do some mistakes. It doesn't matter if we evolve quickly. But we did try to have a very serious open data approach. So in France, we do publish every day the statistics as we have them, and it's put on data.gouv.fr, so one can cross the data with other data. It's a real open data strategy. We also decided to separate the government presentation, political conversation, and the administrative. So the data are given by the administration, by the public servant, and the strategies explanation from the government. And some people don't really trust the politician, but they trust the public servants. So we separate both. The second lesson, and that's very important, we cannot face a threat like this without a social resilience, without a global consensus from the civil society, and without people helping together, without people understanding together what we do propose. From this, we did learn a lot from Africa, because with Ebola, a lot of people know that we have to build a global consensus from the society, and we have to help the society to act together, and that's very important. So one simple example, for example, is that we discovered in France that a lot of small companies, a lot of local authorities tried to develop self-testing, self-evaluation solutions. And we decided to help them and to encourage them. So we, the government, we just did develop an algorithm with the best authorities, with the Institut Pasteur, the Pasteur Institute, and we gave them the algorithm saying, okay, you can do whatever you want, but we give you science, but science through an open source algorithm, and then you do whatever you want. And the last point is that here, of course, we need a lot of tools, a lot of answers, we need masks, we need respirators, and the civil society, the makers, the startups, the association, etc., has a lot of ideas, a lot of solutions, and we have to learn to empower these movements. To be frank, the 3 first weeks, it was impossible for the government because we had too much stuff to do. But now we start to organize an open source innovation strategy. For example, the main French hospital, l'Assistance Publique Hôpitaux de Paris, which is the biggest hospital in the world, did open a platform to ask to the makers if they are able to make respirators, if they are able to. So we share what we need, and we expect and we encourage the society to help us. And just to conclude, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, the international French-speaking organization, did open a kind of network with Africa, and with now we are quite 1,300 makers in Africa, in 50 countries, and we interact with them every day to help them to organize themselves, to build a stronger cooperation, to be a serious and a concrete network. And we consider that it's an important part of the solution of the epidemic.
Thank you very much, Henri. I do understand that the interpretation is back on. Our deepest apologies. You can choose your languages now. We will still be translating into English, French, and Spanish. Let's hear from Audrey. Audrey, how are things going in Taiwan? We need to unmute Audrey, please.
Okay, is it better now? Can you hear me? Is the sound getting through? Okay, excellent. Really happy to be here to share with you how Taiwan has been doing. Taiwan has been no lockdowns. It's been almost 4 weeks now with no domestic confirmed cases. Our baseball games have been playing, and tomorrow will be more than 1,000 people joining in the baseball game. So we're doing okay, and we donated quite a few masks to the international community. Now, with 5 minutes, I would like to show how digital social innovation works. Because I'm connecting through Skype, through link, there is no screen sharing. So I'll have to use this very analog approach, which is holding my screen to the camera, and hopefully you can still make out some of the words on the iPad here. So we've been able to contain the coronavirus quite successfully by using the power of digital social innovation. And social innovation, that is to say, people who participate from all walks of life in order to publicly benefit the society, is the cornerstone of Taiwan's collective intelligence response system. And there's 3 keywords: that's fast, fair, and fun. And so the first thing is that it's really fast. Whereas many countries began countering the coronavirus only this year, Taiwan actually started last year. Last December, when Dr. Li Wenliang, the whistleblower from PRC, posted on social media there that there's new SARS cases, he got inquiries and eventually punishments from his local police institutions. But at the same time, the Taiwan equivalent of Reddit, the PTT forum, has somebody with the name No More Pipe reposting Dr. Li Wenliang's whistleblowing. And instead of facing any discipline, the head of Center for Disease Control immediately noticed this post and issued an order that says all the passengers flying in from Wuhan to Taiwan need to start health inspection the very next day. That's the first day of this year. And so this says 2 things about open government. First, the civil society trusts the government enough to talk about new SARS outbreak in the public forum. And the government trusts the citizen enough to take it seriously and treat it as if SARS happened again, something we've always been preparing since 2003. And because according to the Civicus Monitor, Taiwan is the only place in Asia where we have a completely open civil society, and along with New Zealand, one of the only 2 in Asia Pacific, we enjoy the same freedom of speech, of assembly, of the press, and so on as other liberal democratic countries. There was an emphasis on keeping an open mind to new ideas from the society, and that's partly why our schools still remain open today. For one example, every day our Central Epidemic Command Center, or CECC, holds a press conference, which is always live streamed. And this is important because it shows that all the new ideas coming from the civil society, they can just dial this single telephone line, which is 1922, and tell the idea to the CECC. And there's people who, for example, called and said they know their neighbor, there's a young boy that said he didn't want to go to school because their schoolmates laughed at him for wearing a pink medical mask. And the very next day, everybody you just saw in the CECC press conference started wearing pink medical masks, making sure everybody learns about gender mainstreaming. And they answer all the questions from the journalists in the live streamed press conference with a kind of co-learning approach. And it is gender mainstreaming itself is a kind of social innovation that builds rapid response and trust between the government and the civil society. On the case of open data, we do use a lot of open data to ensure fairness, and fairness especially in the distribution of medical masks. So what you're looking at is one of the 140 or so applications that makes use of the National Health Insurance open data that publish the stock level of adult masks and children's masks in all the pharmacies around Taiwan. There's 6,000 of them. And we publish not at the end of day, we publish every 30 seconds. And now it's every 3 minutes because there's no queues now, but every 3 minutes. And that's why GovZero and many community contributors can build those tools that let people view the maps, or people with blindness hear from voice assistants using chatbots to get the same inclusive access to information about which pharmacy near them still have masks. And because we have universal health coverage that ensure anyone who show any symptom will be able to take the medical mask from a nearby pharmacy, go to a local clinic, knowing that they will be treated fairly and without any financial burden incurred. And so that also enabled the supply and demand map that then inform our mask distribution policies. So evidence-based policy making. And finally, on the Henry's points about misinformation and disinformation, we have found an antidote for that too. And it's called humor over rumor, or fun. And humor over rumor is the basic idea that outrage travels very quickly, but fun travels even more quickly. So where there's panic buying of tissue papers, for example, there was a rumor that says it's the same material as facial masks. So there was panic buying because we're making so many medical masks. It's almost 20 million now a day. And so we have our prime minister, our premier here. He used to smile in this mask collection advertisement, but now he's showing his bottom and wiggling a little bit, and with the title that says, "We only have each of us one pair of Botox." And that went absolutely viral. And the payload is this table that shows the tissue paper came from the material of South American and medical masks come from the material that's produced domestically. And so the mimetic packaging has a payload that relieves people of panic buying, and the panic buying died down in a day or two without any censorship. And finally, we found that the people who spread this rumor in the first place was a tissue paper reseller. And it's not just a single shot thing. Every day after the press conference, all the social distancing rule, hand sanitation, and things like that are translated into dog memes by the spokesdog of the Ministry of Health and Welfare to ensure that people enjoy sharing these things around. And so there's more you can read at taiwancanhelp.us, but that is the basic idea, how we use fast, fair, and fun and social innovation to counter the coronavirus here in Taiwan.
You are wonderful, Audrey. Thank you so very much. So can I get a pink mask, please? I think OGP should provide everyone who attended this webinar with a pink mask so we can rock it. We have questions flooding in and we're taking them down. There's a question from Mo talking about what governments are doing to make sure that apps don't miss out women and minority groups and other ethnic minorities. We have a question from Adelusi of Nigeria, who is asking how states can include local communities, subnational communities in their digital governance. And still on inclusion, we have Setu from Cote d'Ivoire, who is asking about how do we include those who are not connected? We're going to come round. We're taking note of all the questions. I also have a question for you. Don't just think I'm here talking. I also will ask you questions. But we want to hear from two more great people. Martin, are you in London or are you on the moon? Where are you locked down in? Welcome. Martin, you're still on mute. Can you please unmute Martin? Martin, you need to begin again. I can't seem to hear you. Can you increase the volume? Let me check. Not yet done. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone for a minute to... Martin, you've been unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Let me turn to my other panelist, my other contributor, while I sort out Martin's microphone. Let me come to you, Martha. Martha and Martin are so people. Martha, you are in New Mexico, and how are you seeing things? How is the curve flattening? And then I'm going to come back to Martin.
Thank you. Could you please repeat the question?
My question is to you is that you've been fighting misinformation from the civil society side. We've heard someone from government. Now we want to hear from your side, and then we're going to hear from Martin. But to you, you've been fighting lots of battles. I mean, there's the big war of COVID-19, but then you've been fighting your own battles. What have been your battles? What have you seen? What have you learned?
Okay, thank you so much for all the organizers to inviting me to be part of this panel. One of the things we have seen is against the fight of disinformation is, as Article 19, I'm part of an organization called Article 19 that fights towards freedom of expression and freedom of information. So for us, it's really important to say that all expressions are covered by this right. And just because something isn't verified or doesn't come from a trustable source, it doesn't mean that it should be prohibited in the internet or in the media. So it's really been a fight to try not to satanize or to give it like a negative notion to the word disinformation, and just recognize it as a phenomena that it could be approached through more information. How can we develop tools in society for them to be able to have more information and to be able to contrast verifiable sources of the ones that are not that way. And also in the question that I'm gonna, or in my participation after Martin, I'm gonna talk about surveillance technologies and how we have been fighting also these kind of apps because they imply serious risks towards human rights. So thank you, Nena.
Thank you so very much. Are we back to Martin now? We need to unmute Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I was trying to jump on my phone. This is not going to be resilient, I think. We're speaking by the Wi-Fi.
It went mute again. No, I think you need to remove.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Now you are good.
Okay, I'm good.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thanks. Let me try this. I was hoping to speak by phone because that's the connection that works. But if that's not possible, I'll try this and let me know if you can't hear me. Look, I'll be brief. My main point is that the implication of COVID-19 data on privacy, I think, is that we need to put a major rocket launcher around efforts on algorithmic accountability. I think that it's extremely important to look at COVID-19 data, not solely in terms of a civil and political liberties question, in terms of whether we suffer or not intrusion in exchange for health. The longer the conversation is about a binary, a fake binary between privacy and health, privacy will go nowhere as a conversation. I think we need to be very clear that this is about socioeconomic rights as well as civil and political rights. And the reason that is because of the implication of COVID-19 data and how that will be used. And if we've learned anything from the past 5 years of work around the impact of automated decision-making on people, on groups and society, is that they fall the harshest on the most marginalized and the most vulnerable groups in the societies. So really, what I'm interested in having a conversation about and would love to hear from people is how we can ensure that there are safeguards around how this COVID-19 data will be used. How can we assure that the data won't find its way into informing automated decisions, whether by the public or private sector, about employment, right? About finances, people's mortgages, about people's education, about their kids' education, in the way that we're seeing automated decisions now work. So I think what's important here is not to look at it purely as an individualistic issue, but as a collective issue as well. And a lot of the work that we're doing, that I'm trying to do, is to look at and understanding the impact of these collective data-driven harms. So just to take a second on this, I think a lot of times when we talk about data-driven harms, we talk about very individual ones, which are important. And by and large, governments and others, regulation, civil society know how to handle them better, right? So if people know my age, and as a result of knowing my age, discriminate against me in an employment setting using my age as personal data, we've got regulations around that. We've got data protection laws. There are 107 data protection laws in the world. We have in certain countries Equalities Acts, anti-discrimination laws, within employment laws. We can deal with that. The thing that concerns me the most is what I call, based on the work of academics such as Sandra Vactor and others, inferred data-driven harms, where based on data about other people, information about my behavior is inferred, right? So for example, someone is inferred to be unfit for employment due to their browsing or purchasing habits, and perhaps soon if someone is deemed to be unfit for employment because of people they are connected with, who themselves may have been connected with others who have COVID-19 or may be susceptible of having COVID-19. That's what we need to be very careful to guard about. And I think the moment this COVID-19 data gets into this sort of data lake that permeates our societies in different ways, that's when we really need to start to worry. And I think we need to start thinking about this right now. I mentioned earlier sort of data protection laws. I would say 95%, 99% of the conversation right now, when we talk about guardrails and accountability around privacy and COVID-19, is focused on data protection. I think it's important, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. You really need to look at algorithmic accountability. There are very few countries in the world that have algorithmic accountability laws. France is one of them, with the Loi Le Maire, with the Digital Republic Bill, which focuses on administrative decision-making and gives people the right to know whether a decision was made that impacted them, that was automated, and then gives them open data about that decision and gives them the source code for that decision and the weightings as to how that decision was made. I think we need to fast track that type of work, apply it to the private sector, and get rid of the restrictions that GDPR has on algorithmic accountability. I won't necessarily go in the weeds with you now. I'm happy to. Many people on the call here, I see Fanny from Access Now, know this much better than I do. The weakest parts of the GDPR in Europe are Articles 15 and 22 on algorithmic accountability. And I really think it's important for us to go much further around that topic and to have these these safeguards not be limited to personal data, not be limited simply to significant decisions, not be limited to decisions that are 100% automated. There was an effort in the United States last year that stalled in Congress to have an Algorithmic Accountability Act. The biggest mistake we could be doing right now as governments to continue to shelve those debates and focus on the sort of here and now, will people suffer the intrusion or not when it comes to data privacy? I think that's absolutely key. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Martin. Now we have basket loads of it. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Martin. I have 5 pages of notes, but I have a quick question. If OGP Secretariat can pop up something on your window, I want to hear from you. What do you consider the biggest digital governance challenge during the pandemics that we are in? Please vote up, or I want to know what you think, where you're sitting from. Yeah. And I told you these were my first wave of contributors. I would also like to hear from a few more contributors for a minute, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, that's fine. But it would be good to hear from you as we all vote up. I'm going to call up on 1 or 2 old friends, people who work on different sectors. Please give me your word. What do you think? What have you heard? And what do you think at this time? What are your first immediate thoughts? Are we done voting? No, we have 1 more minute, but they are going to pop it up. So 1 minute I'm going to give to Matthew Redden. Matthew, where are you locked down in? And what have you heard, especially on misinformation?
So I'm currently locked down in Toronto, Canada. And just for everyone, I work at an organization that's based in Toronto called IFEX, and we are a freedom of expression organization, freedom of expression network. And I work at the Secretariat, and we have well over 100 members of our organization. And I think what we're hearing from many of our members regarding misinformation and the impact of misinformation, that is largely in the way that it's affecting journalists and civil society, human rights defenders, and the role that they play in combating misinformation. So, I think it's important just to reiterate the point that comprehensive fact-based reporting about the pandemic, its impact, and government policy to protect the population, to contain the virus is vital and an antidote to the infodemic that the World Health Organization flagged earlier at the start of the pandemic. So, reporting that ensures a really high degree of professional standard can set the record straight on myths, on conspiracy theories, such as some of those, the ones that are a little bit more out there about, inhaling blow dryer air and things like that. And so it can also serve as a counterweight to government propaganda and also be a bulwark against ideas or words that amount to hate speech, which usually seems to flare up during times of emergency. It's also it's essential for communicating critical public health information to citizens and serve as a feedback mechanism for governments that can be used to respond to and ease public concerns and improve government policy towards the pandemic. So, I think it's important to stress that it's not a trade-off between, or it shouldn't be a trade-off between public health and respect for rights, but that respect for rights, particularly, from our perspective, the rights of freedom of expression, and from the perspective of my colleague Martha at Article 19, who is actually an IFEX member organization, is crucial for upholding the public right to health because of that role that it plays in communicating very important information about the pandemic and about the government's response to it, and about information that the public can use to leverage and keep themselves safe. Now, I think just to touch quickly on some of the challenges to this, many of which spread from the spread of disinformation and misinformation, is that journalists have faced threats, harassment, stigmatization, even physical violence through the course of the reporting on the crisis. And many of these attacks are fueled by governments that are actively trying to discredit the media, to push their own misinformation campaigns, or to silence reporting that is critical of government responses during the pandemic.
Right. So let's not forget that OGP also has an OpenGov guide on the right to information in the context of COVID, which gives us a bit of a background. Yao, where are you? Yao Ricardo?
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, good. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. Yeah, actually, I'm based in Paris, so it's a pleasure to join here. Great interventions from the organizers. So just to give you some quick feedback about some countries and what our countries are doing and what are we observing in the OECD. I think the question of digital transformation was already recognized as a top priority by governments and the digital transformation of government, but COVID-19 reinforced a lot this trend. And what we can see right now is that, on the one hand, there are countries that were already quite advanced in their digital government policies and were able to run more smoothly following the outbreak, whether in terms of delivering services or advancing with digital processes. So this made all the difference in cases, I don't know, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Estonia, Denmark, UK, Korea. So those countries benefited a lot from what was already in place. But an interesting trend that we are also observing is that a lot of countries are actually using this opportunity to further transform their public sector and making sure that the crisis is also an opportunity to unblock problems that were on the way and get the political support to further digitalize their public sector. We've received some very interesting news, for instance, from colleagues in Brazil that were able to launch services and launch digital services very quickly, also based on this big demand from the citizens. What is the OECD doing? And this just to give you some highlights. So we have a working party of senior digital government officials that we call the day leaders. And what we've been doing, and the priority right now, is to really listen to this government CIOs and try to understand what keeps them awake at night during this hard time. So, for instance, we had a big call during last week with more than 30 countries that jump in, and we received a lot of feedback in terms of the importance of the OECD developing webinars, sharing experiences and practices of countries, and even developing toolkits or guides for crisis management. Also, yes. Build on this effort. We are having a call for practice being developed together with our Observatory of Public Sector Innovation. We have a paper on disinformation that is being developed by our open government team that hopefully will be shared very soon. So a lot of work being done here. If I could highlight 2 or 3, if you
quickly.
Yeah, on this. There's a trend here of never miss a great crisis to transform the public sector. So we've been observing this everywhere. This transformation, however, and that's what we are underlining more and more, it's not, the digital transformation of the public sector should not be focused on a technology itself, should not be technology driven, but yes, citizen driven and focused on citizen well-being. On the other hand, and it was already mentioned here by several speakers, we should use typically open by default approaches, and by this we mean open data policies, open software policies, and there's a big demand from countries right now also for open software, not only because of questions of accountability, but also the capacity to share code between countries and how this can help the response of countries. Also questions of open algorithms, like my
all the way. That's why we are here. We are open government partnership. Audrey is happy about being open, and I am as well. The poll results are in. Our top concern is trust and openness in governance. And I think we want to take that away. I'm taking the line that says, don't miss out on the opportunity to transform ourselves for the better. And I think that applies individually, communally, that applies to every government, that applies to us as a globe. There's a global community that applies to the Open Government Partnership, that applies to every single nation that is going through this pandemic. We cannot miss the opportunity to take this and build, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is social infrastructure, governance infrastructure, human infrastructure. We cannot miss this opportunity to do better. We want to hear from Fanny from Access Now. You've done a lot. I received a mail yesterday from your CEO about all the battles that are going on. How are you, Fanny? And what are your immediate thoughts? 1 minute.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I would actually like to pivot from my original idea of presenting the safeguards and everything we've been working on. I'll just drop them in the chat. You can read them. But I would actually like to react particularly to what Martin said and about algorithmic accountability and AI. As you know, there is a lot of discussion around how to make those mandatory and binding. And one area I would recommend all of us to engage is to call for mandatory human rights impact assessments, both for the individual and the collective rights. And there's a room now to make your voice heard in the EU white paper consultation. And I would be happy to connect on this after. And so you see that there is an actual result coming from mandatory human rights impact assessment is a breaking news that happened during our webinar. And it is particularly relevant for people in Toronto because Sidebox Lab just announced that they are withdrawing from the infamous Smart City project in Toronto, which seemed unstoppable. And it's really amazing news. And my second point is for everyone, fellow activists, advocates, and everyone in this space, that we keep hearing repeated how emergency and extraordinary times require extraordinary measures, and all these governments introduce emergency legislation and suspends lots of the norms, international or domestic norms that our work has been centered on. And I think we have to invite ourselves and everyone to think creatively about new advocacy avenues, because while my job is to keep fighting for those rights and norms to be applied, I think we have to be more creative in times of crisis. And we have to learn from countries and organizations that have operated under constant state of emergencies and that type of political oppression. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fanny. Let me add one more lady. Martha, I didn't hear you much during your 5 minutes, so I'm going to give you an extra minute. If you want to pop in, that would be great. Martha, please.
Hi again. Yeah, I would like to speak about surveillance technologies and why this is like a problem to human rights. And to start answering the questions about why are we talking about this and why policy and regulation of tech tools is such an important topic for human rights right now while we're trying to deal with the pandemic, I would like to characterize the contact tracing apps and why do we consider in Article 19 that these apps are extremely intrusive in people's lives. So most of them collect a vast amount of personal information, such as biometric data, health-related data, and data regarding people's movements. And in addition, some of them track users' movements in the private and in the public space. And while all of this is happening, we still don't know who is launching these apps, which is the technology used by these apps, and also if the app is guaranteeing encryption and anonymization of the data. All of these characteristics raise serious concerns for protection of human rights, not only in terms of privacy and data protection, but also for freedom of expression. And that's why Article 19 is working on it. So the knowledge of being constantly under the eye of the government might impact on people's behaviors. It can have a chilling effect on their freedom to adopt actions. And also the information collected by the apps exposes to harm some people more than others, such as whistleblowers, journalists, political activists, human rights. So we're worried that this is happening now, but we're also worried about what will happen in the future when the pandemic is over. And this is extremely relevant in countries like in Mexico, where there are no formal mechanisms or policy safeguards in place to protect us against these possible abuses. So that's why in this panel, we also wanted to speak about the OGP commitment on a multi-stakeholder model to examine procurement in the use of technologies and to emphasize why this is really important to the protection of our rights. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha. I'm going to ask you another question on the poll. But before that, Hamzat, are you online from Code in Nigeria? Is Hamzat online? I wanted to hear from him because he's dealing with subnationals. Welcome, my brother. How are you? Let's hear you. What are your first thoughts? We cannot seem to hear you. It's breaking. Could you remove the headset? Maybe just speak directly.
Okay. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. So, so when we had the index case in Nigeria, what we did was to first start engaging government on how prepared they are on COVID-19. First, let me backtrack. In January, our Minister for Health came publicly and said Nigeria was ready for COVID-19. And then when we had the index case sometime in February 17, then we found that from data we had access to, government was not even prepared and they were not ready to tackle the issue of COVID-19. But let me just dive down to the subnational level. One, we were dealing with issues around fake news, of course, but two, a lot of people at the subnational level did not believe in COVID-19. At first, they thought that COVID-19 was an elite problem. So it has nothing to do with the grassroots people that are usually marginalized and poor. And then they also thought it was an avenue for government to actually mobilize resources or use resources that they were supposed to use to fund probably a capital expenditure in Nigeria, because what we saw was people coming out to donate billions of naira. So what we did was first we engaged NCDC, because NCDC initially was saying they were testing 500 people daily. And we said, if you're testing 500 people daily, can you give us aggregate data of how many people you've tested since the index case in Nigeria? Because what we were getting was only results around people who are tested positively or negatively and people who were quarantined and sadly people who have died. And then secondly, we're asking the Ministry of Finance, because the president set up the presidential task force on COVID-19. And we're asking the Ministry of Finance how much have been mobilized so far around COVID-19. And so we didn't get information. And then fake news started flying up and down where, we saw a document that the ministry have mobilized over 60 billion, and it took a long time for government to respond after 72 hours. And then they said, oh, they've only gotten about 30 billion, which was not clear and didn't give aggregated information. So we engaged the Accountant General of the Federation. And just yesterday, we had a webinar with the Bureau of Public Procurement and other civil society organizations. And interestingly, today now we have the government saying, so now we've gotten concrete commitment from the government. One, the Bureau of Public Procurement has now come up with a guideline on how they should disburse and utilize COVID-19 spending to ensure that they leave a digital trail of the spending. So there's not going to be cash withdrawal. So it has to move from one government account to contractors' account to provide medical supplies. The independent corrupt practices and other related offenses, which is the government anti-graft agency, has also released their guideline to ensure that these funds are not siphoned. The Minister of Finance have also responded to our request, and which we informed, telling the Accountant General to publish daily how much income and expenditure and what was this funds disbursed for, at that front. But what we did to counter fake news was using radio, because a lot of people don't have access to internet, and of course, internet is very expensive from this part of the world, so people cannot afford them, and those who can afford them, don't have that patience to deep into the information they're accessing. So we use radio, but we also scaled our campaign. So we started a hashtag called Follow COVID-19 Money in Nigeria, and now this campaign is running in the Gambia. So in the Gambia, our colleagues are tracking World Bank money that have been given to the government, about $10 million. In Cameroon. In Cameroon, so far the president has not even addressed Cameroon, engaging the task force that have been set by the president, and getting data from them and engaging people using Twitter, Facebook, and radio. I just also mentioned that we started getting threats from Cameroon. So we're getting threats from boot accounts, threatening our team in Cameroon, even going as far as threatening to come and man our team where they are using digital tool. In Kenya, we're also countering fake news and using Twitter to lead dialogue around budget. So we're breaking down what the task force is using the resources for, and breaking it down and translating it into Kiswahili. Lastly, in Zimbabwe, we're helping governments to also do contact tracing using Google Map.
Okay.
Should I go on?
No, you've done enough. There are a basket of questions. I don't know how our major contributors are going to go around it. There's a question on transparency on budget. That's where he's coming from. There is countering misinformation. There is transparency in the day-to-day management and even the data. There is the data security and all of that. There is trust. Someone has a clear question to you, Audrey. It appears trust is high in Taiwan. How did you build it? So basically, how do we build trust? How do we manage misinformation? How are we communicating daily? Someone said in Cameroon, the president hasn't said a thing. How do we connect the unconnected? How do we get people, if we're looking at digital governance and part of the population is not connected? How do we manage subnational and local communities? There are so many questions. I'm going to do a quick round. I'm going to begin with Henri. Henri, it's going to be okay to speak in French now. Our translation is working. So I'm going to give 2 minutes each. I will come back to you for a last word. Please note that our conversation is not ending here. We are recording. We are on Twitter as well. Okay. Please tweet at OGP and we can always get back to you. It's open, we'll continue the conversation. So Henri, then Audrey, Martin, and Martha. 2 minutes to address what you can while we continue the conversation. Henri.
Okay, so I can try to speak French now. Alors, j'essaye de parler français. Oui, j'ai peu parlé tout à l'heure des grandes controverses sur les applications de contact tracing, tracing de contact. En France aussi, nous sommes en plein milieu de cette controverse. Évidemment, face à une épidémie, il peut être essentiel de tracer très vite les contacts des malades, à la fois pour comprendre la propagation de l'épidémie et pour prévenir les personnes qui ont été exposées à un risque. Et évidemment, ces applications peuvent créer des dangers sur la vie privée, sur les données personnelles, mais aussi, comme l'a dit Martin, sur notre organisation collective. En France, la controverse est en cours. Aujourd'hui, il y a un très grand débat, mais le gouvernement a promis 4 choses. Premièrement, nous ne déploierons une application comme ceci que si elle sert à quelque chose. C'est important. Face à une crise, on envisage toujours des dispositifs, c'est ce qu'on appelle parfois le solutionnisme technologique, technological solutionnisme. Les gouvernements veulent toujours faire des outils, il faut être certain qu'il y aura des gens pour s'en servir, que ça servira à quelque chose, etc. Deuxièmement, il a été décidé qu'en France, si nous faisons une telle application, ce sera après une décision du Parlement. Donc, il y aura un débat au Parlement avec l'opposition et nous prendrons une décision au Parlement. Troisièmement, bien sûr, mais nous sommes en Europe, il faut respecter le GDPR, le Règlement général pour la protection des données. Et donc, les données doivent être effacées à la fin, il faut des formes de consentement. Quatrièmement, j'en ai 5 en fait, ce sera sur une base de volontariat, c'est-à-dire on n'obligera personne à utiliser l'application. Et cinquièmement, le code source sera public, ouvert et partageable pour que chacun puisse vérifier qu'il n'y a pas dans l'application des backdoors, des stocks de données, etc. Donc, il n'est pas certain que la France va le faire, mais si elle le fait, elle le fera avec toutes ces sécurités que je viens d'énumérer.
Okay, that is something we need to take write down and put it in the annals of OGP, because it's very important that we have these guidelines to data management. Audrey, on trust.
Okay, am I muted? Can you hear me? Okay, that's great. So yeah, I think the government need to fully trust the citizens. I don't really mind if the citizen doesn't trust us because it keeps us honest. But the government need to fully trust the citizen with all the relevant information, especially when it comes around science, where everybody learns more and more about the COVID every day, literally. At the beginning, we just assumed that it starts over again. And so we have not deployed any app level contact tracing. What we have done instead is to do home quarantine and home isolation at the arrival port, because Taiwan being a bunch of islands, it's hard to accidentally stumble upon Taiwan. So what we have done is a design called the digital fence, where the human right, the privacy around the phone, the mobile phone, is massively encroached for 14 days for everybody entering Taiwan. If they show no symptoms. If they do, they're hospitalized. But in any case, during those 14 days, if people cell phone signals via triangulation of cell phone towers move outside of the digital fence, then the local household manager and the police gets notice via SMS immediately. But after the 14 days, we don't have the constitutional right to do any monitoring of the whereabouts, and life resumes normal. So this is a very clear delineation of the home quarantine, where privacy suffers, and normal life. And Taiwan has never declared a lockdown or an emergency law, so that we have to operate entirely within the constitutional limit with pre-approval of everything the administration does by the legislature. So we have to explain the scientific basis for each and every measure that we make. So that at the end results in 91% of people approving of the CECC measures. And if you can take a look at taiwancanhelp.us, there's a crash course on epidemiology recorded by our vice president to build a case for the measures that we're taking. And we also finally want to thank everybody, not only who participated in home quarantine and received the stipend for that, but also the 9% that did not agree with our measures, because they make sure that we have to explain each and every data action that we take. And they make sure that we hold ourselves to account, even during those 14 days of mandatory home quarantine and home isolation. I'll leave you with that note.
Okay, I'm taking a line from there. Even if citizens don't trust you, the government needs to trust citizens. Martin, misinformation, local and sublocal, national and subnational, open data.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yep, open data, always. Okay, look, I'll speak a little slower and hopefully it'll be easier to capture in different languages. I'll just make 3 points. I think there's three things we need to do: short, medium, longer term, right? Short term, open data. We need governments, private sector to provide open data to inform the modeling, especially, as well as symptom tracking, but the modeling behind the epidemic. And we've been doing some work with Open Data Institute on this. And I very much encourage everyone to be in touch with the ODI, the Open Data Institute, who are looking for partners for this. Short term, number one. Number two, I think open government partnership should be very clear in its support for certain types of approaches in the medium term to the coronavirus response, such as what are the characteristics of privacy preserving contact tracing apps? To Henri's point, I would like to see open government partnership express a preference between a decentralized or centralized approach to contact tracing apps. What is OGP's view on the DP3T protocol? Let's have that. Medium term still, I would like to see the open government partnership support model laws such as the Coronavirus Safeguards Bill that was developed by Lillian Edwards and others in the United Kingdom, and the establishment of scrutiny bodies to empower the legislators to play their roles, such as the proposal for a GATE, a group of advisors on technology and emergencies, which was suggested again in the UK. Those are my suggestions for the medium term. I think in the longer term, those were my earlier comments, and thank you, Fanny, for the good point around human rights impact assessments. In the longer term, I think we need a digital public bill on the model, but going beyond the French Digital Republic Bill, and ensure that that is applicable to the public as well as the private sector, and provides genuine algorithmic accountability, which is then relevant for COVID-19 data. So short term, medium term, long term. I think the risk right now is that we forget the long term by focusing on the short, or that we don't do the short term because we focus on what happens next year. And that's the balance we need to find.
Right.
Thanks.
Right. From Colombia, Lucila is also talking to us about the law on transparency, which obligates the government to open data. Please keep your comments. I'm reading them as we go along on the chat, and bring in your questions. If you want to speak, please raise your hand. Locate the raise hand function. Raise your hand if you have something burning that writing it alone wouldn't be enough. Please, you have a right to a voice. Martha? You need to unmute, Martha.
Hi, thank you. Well, yeah, I just wanted to sum up the importance of understanding that these are human rights issues, right? So when you're trying to procure the right to health of people by tackling disinformation or by developing certain technologies that could be used to track people or to provide them with information, there's always a fact that you have to weigh in all the rights that are involved. So maybe in the right to health is prevailing right now because of the crisis, but right now also because of the development of these efforts, the right of freedom of expression, the right of privacy, right of data protection, maybe they're waiting in and they are not prevailing right now. So we need to understand which are the consequences of this. How are these decisions made? Who is procuring our data and privacy and all these other rights? And how do we know that the implementation of these technologies is really useful for the things that they were created for, and they're not being used for something else? And how can we understand and to acknowledge that this is a problem right now, but it will be also a problem in the future if we lack of policies, of regulations, of oversight mechanisms to stop governments, mainly because they're the ones who usually abuse this kind of technologies and these kinds of powers. If we don't have these types of safeguards, we're powerless, and we need them. That's why OPG is really fighting. OGP is really fighting for developing these kind of agreements, of commitments that can help civil society and the different actors that are not the government to participate and to voice their main concerns and to speak about, okay, there are a lot of rights involved and we have to talk about it. It's not just the right to health right now. We need to weigh in all the other rights that are involved and why we also need to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, Alison is pointing out that this is addressing Moore's earlier question on marginalized and non-included groups and populations. I have another question for you. I'm going to pop up a poll now. I want to hear you on the issue of tracking apps. It is now the main thing. Everyone's got a phone, we're told. Everyone's been tracked for their own good, we hear, but we have challenges. And Martin has challenged us into not just thinking short term, but we need to think short term, medium term, and long term. And as we've said, we cannot miss the opportunity of COVID-19 to make ourselves better as a world, to do better. Please vote up. Let's hear you. What do you consider as the major challenge of the tracking apps? Is it data privacy? Is it unwarranted surveillance? Or is it data security and use of the data after the pandemics? While you vote up, I'm going to ask you, this is the final in a series of OGP's reach to the community. And OGP is all of us, whether we are government, whether we're civil society or private sector. It is the new world. So the post-pandemic world is going to be an OGP world. Whether you're a member of the organization or not, this is it. That is, I mean, this world is never going to be the same again. Openness has come to stay. Digital governance has come to stay. Transparency has come to stay. Open data is forcing its way through the door. Things are going to change. And if there is any organization whose role is going to be very important, more important than before, it is going to be the open government partnership. And so the question to you is, where do you see OGP moving forward from the pandemics? What's your vision? I see someone says OGP's objectives need to be realigned. They need to be reassessed. Where do you think we should go forward as OGP? That will be our last part. I'm asking this, put it on the chat, tweet it, email us, keep thinking about it. If you have an answer, if you have a link, please drop it, and we'll very much want to hear from you. Please keep the questions also coming. How do countries ensure communities have access to mobile data? That's connectivity, because we can't, my good people, we can't be talking about digital governance without even digital existence. At the World Wide Web Foundation, we work on connecting people, and we believe that at the Web Foundation, we believe that connection to the internet should be a human right. I don't know. That is what I'm going to put down at the OGP's window now, that it is high time that getting broadband internet connectivity becomes considered as a basic right, because without it, we wouldn't get out. And just imagine what it would have been if we did not have internet connectivity at this time. So where do you think we should be going? Our polls are in. Woo! Data security and use of the data after pandemics took 67% of the polls. That tells us something about security and about the trust we have that these can be managed well. I'm going to stop now. If you want to say something, please signal. If you want to write it down, that's fine. Whichever way, we have the next 2-3 minutes for you. And then we are going to come back to our speakers 1 minute to wrap up. Do we have any raised hands? I haven't seen raised hands. Please help me if I can see them. But please, I'm reading what you're writing now. Open data and digitalization from Alejandro. Okay. Usman Lee. Usman Lee, please.
Ok. Bien, merci. Je pense que mon son a été rétabli. Je vais parler en français. J'espère que la traduction va se faire. Je voudrais juste faire une remarque, c'est que nous ne devons pas en aucun cas abandonner nos libertés par rapport à une crise sanitaire. La question de la protection de nos données doit être fondamentale. Elle est cardinale. Parce que si nous abandonnons notre liberté, même aux mains d'un gouvernement qui pense qu'il va faire du bien, ce que nous pourrons récolter par l'avenir sera extrêmement dangereux. Si on ne se trompe pas, le nazisme s'est mis en place parce que le gouvernement de Hitler voulait le bien du peuple allemand et le bien du monde universellement. Donc, on a eu déjà des expériences dans le monde. Aucune maladie ne peut justifier cela. Maintenant, il y a ce qu'on appelle des mesures de protection de santé publique. Moi, je suis médecin qu'on doit prendre et je comprends bien, mais je le prendrai en respectant le secret professionnel, en respectant le secret médical, en respectant la liberté de mon patient. Et ça, c'est fondamental et cardinal. C'est la remarque que je voulais faire. Merci.
Thank you very much, Lee, and all the best to your family. Say hello to the baby behind. You are welcome to bring in the cats and the dogs. We want to hear them. What's the new way of barking after the pandemic? I'm going to circle back to all of our panelists, saying thank you very much to Henri, to Audrey, and to Martha. If you have one line, one last word. It's not 1 minute, but one line. That means 30 seconds. I think we'll go from Martha to Henri this time around. Martha, Martin, Audrey, Henri, and then we can close. Martha, go for it.
Thank you. Well, just to put on the table that digital rights are human rights and they deserve the same level of protection on the internet, etc. So we have to protect them. Thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you. Martin?
Accountability is the answer to the Patriot Act on steroids that is coming our way.
Great. Audrey?
4 years ago, when our president, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, campaigned for her first term, she promised broadband as a human right. And today, even on the top of Taiwan, 4,000 meters high, there is 10 megabits per second 4G connection, unlimited data for 16 euros per month for everybody. And if anywhere in Taiwan you don't have broadband of that level, it's my fault personally. And because of that, I think we have gained a tremendous upper hand in countering coronavirus because everybody can be their own media and we built a pro-social media rather than an anti-social media. Thank you.
I love you, Audrey. I love you. Henri?
En une phrase, je dirais que nous avons une menace collective qui ne peut être vaincue que par une réponse collective et que le grand sujet qui devant nous, c'est l'intelligence collective.
Thank you very much. Thank you to every single one of you. A shout out to Taye Adelusi Titus, who's been crazy on the Zoom window, on the Zoom chat window. Thank you to all of you from all over the world. I am going to hand over now to Carolina from OGP to close us. On behalf of myself, my digital self and my physical self, on behalf of all our great panelists, we want to wave. Put on your cameras if you can. Let's see who, wherever you are. We waved at the beginning. We want to say thank you again for coming. Woo! That's a lot of us, huh? Oh my goodness, that's over 200 of us. Thank you so very much. At the highest point, I think we had 223 Thank you so very much. Thank you to OGP. Keep being open. You don't have any other choice. And now, from myself, I'm going to say merci beaucoup. Muito obrigada. Gracias. Muchas gracias. And thank you very much. And I'm giving over to our OGP co-chair, Carolina.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much. I'm going to speak in Spanish. I'm from the government of Argentina. Así que I recommend you turn on interpretation. Bueno, si me escuchan bien, quería primero agradecerte, Nena, a todos los panelistas y retomar un punto que mencionó Robin Hodes, nuestra co-chair, al inicio de esta sesión, que es que la gobernanza digital ha sido y es una prioridad como copresidentes desde antes y ahora en el medio de la pandemia. Y no solo como copresidentes, sino que también es un tema que está en el corazón del plan de acción de 3 años de OGP. Y esto lo reforzamos ahora más que nunca con esta discusión que acaba de suceder. Y queremos decir que es una prioridad también porque nos parece importante reflexionar sobre cómo lo digital se cruza, se entrelaza y se articula con lo abierto. Tenemos que pensar el gobierno digital y el gobierno abierto no como silos ni como procesos diferentes, sino entrelazados. Sabemos que en muchos foros y ámbitos especializados se discute la gobernanza digital. Y si como comunidad de gobierno abierto podemos aportar y articular es desde los valores de gobierno abierto. Y creo que esto fue algo que Nena y muchos participantes marcaron mucho en esta discusión. No se trata de duplicar, se trata de articular. Y tomar la gobernanza digital como prioridad también nos lleva a pensar qué hay de oportunidad y qué hay de riesgo, que creo que es algo que también surgió en esta discusión. La pandemia nos interpela constantemente a preguntarnos eso. Lo digital se exacerbó. Con la consigna quédate en casa, solo podemos darnos cuenta de que un estado presente puede estar realmente presente si es a través de un estado digital. Lo digital es un tema de servicios, es un tema de transparencia, de rendición de cuentas, de acceso a la información, es un tema de decisiones, de cómo son los procesos detrás de esas decisiones, si son transparentes, si son automatizados, si están basados en datos o en evidencia. Es un tema de participación también. No perdamos de vista que el hecho de que la movilización ciudadana no se pueda dar en las calles no quiere decir eso que no exista, que no haya activismo, y que no haya activismo masivo. Lo digital es un tema de derechos, eso lo vimos claramente en las presentaciones de hoy, de protección del derecho a la privacidad, entre otros, pero también es un tema de inclusión. Y lo que hay de beneficio y de amenaza en lo digital creo que estuvo en toda la discusión que tuvimos, lo mostraron muy claramente los oradores. Y como copresidente, como gobierno copresidente, lo que me importa marcar es que la discusión no se agota acá, queremos continuarla, porque de eso se trata la campaña Respuesta Abierta, Recuperación Abierta, que es la que nos convoca a este foro digital. Y quizás puede parecer lejana la recuperación, o hablar de recuperación cuando estamos en medio de una crisis y atendiendo una pandemia, pero no podemos dejar pasar la oportunidad de pensar en el estado que queremos post-pandemia. Y la comunidad de gobierno abierto tiene mucho para aportar en esta discusión en torno a COVID y a la reforma que queremos. Los foros multiactor de cada país se están dando esta discusión, los planes de acción de los gobiernos pueden ser un ámbito también para pensar las reformas que queremos y necesitamos. Por eso, esto es como el llamado para pensar en la gobernanza digital, no solo hoy, sino para todo el año y para el estado que se venga. Si vamos a pensar una respuesta abierta y vamos a querer avanzar hacia una recuperación abierta, entonces también preocupémonos por el tipo de reforma y cuán abierta puede ser, porque se trata justamente, como marcaron, de confianza en el Estado. Y por último, me parece clave agradecer a los oradores, a Nena, y también al equipo de OGP, porque si algo dijimos era que no queríamos un webinar más, que esta conversación ya la veníamos teniendo hace 2 meses, ya nadie quiere escuchar hablar de COVID y oradores, y creo que esta discusión fue muy rica, fue muy alentadora, y sobre todo también hay mucho trabajo detrás de ese chat, detrás de la interpretación simultánea, del equipo de Apolítica, así que les mando un aplauso digital a todos, y espero realmente que podamos seguir esta conversación en el próximo tiempo, y que no se agote acá, porque hay mucho para discutir, así que gracias a todos y todas.
Bye, everyone. And thank you very much.
Bye.
Au revoir.